Welcome to the Green Fix. In this podcast, we explore how businesses are navigating a changing world through the lens of supply chains, sustainability, and tech.
Before we get started, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet today and pay our respects to elders past and present. Welcome to the Green Fix. I'm Dan Leverington.
And I'm Loretta Gutierrez.
Today's guests, Courtney Kovac and Georgia Monaghan, are the co-founders of EcoMind. Courtney and Georgia's work is focused on how you can navigate the emotional toll climate change brings to many of us. So we want to use this episode to answer the question that many are asking themselves at the moment. How do you maintain hope in this space? Courtney and Georgia, welcome to the Green Fix.
Thank you.
We'd love to start with a question for both of you that we often ask our guests, which is, what was your journey into the climate space initially?
I think what's quite cool is Court and I have really different journeys. I'm definitely the eco and Court's the mind of EcoMind. For me personally, I'm the daughter of a mining engineer. I grew up in Newcastle, not really realizing I lived in the world's largest coal port. And I didn't know about climate change, but I think like all of us, you realize in hindsight, you were slowly living through it, and hotter summers, more time spent in air conditioning, feeling like every summer you're having more bush smoke. And like a lot of Aussies, the black summer bushfires was my wake up call. I was working in corporate law, but didn't feel really aligned with my values. And there was kind of a cognitive dissonance there. And so that was this amazing wake up call. And I moved from law into consulting in climate and sustainability at Pollination and was there for 5 years and absolutely loved that work, helping corporates and governments on climate and nature strategy. The work is intense and complex. And so in 2024, I kind of burnt out. And so that's what brought me to Court and to EcoMind, and really caring about how do we make sustainability not just sustainable in the end goal, but in how we get there.
And my journey's a little bit different. So I grew up by the ocean, loved being in the water at every opportunity that I could. Always felt a real affinity with nature. And I'd heard about climate change and I was aware of it, but I didn't really understand how it applied to me or my world. And then I watched the David Attenborough documentary. What's it called? The Testament? Oh, his witness statement. And it completely rocked my world. I had never heard it laid out like that. And I'd never seen how close the impacts were in my world and my existence. And rather than being like, I have to do something, it completely overwhelmed me and I ran in the other direction. I felt like I needed to bury my head in the sand. Flight response was activated. And then gently, I started to learn more about it and find my own agency and connection with it and how I could actually participate in the movement. At the time, I was working at Batyr, which is a youth mental health charity, and I was designing programs there that's all around stigma reduction and helping young people to learn that they're not alone. And so we were doing consultations with young people, and time again, climate anxiety is coming up as something that was stressing them out. And I was like, wow, it's really stressing me out too. I have to go and do something at this intersection because it's such an important issue. And I couldn't see a whole heap of work being done in that space. And so that's when I got connected in with Georgia.
And that's a perfect segue because we would love to understand more about EcoMind and how EcoMind has become this shared vehicle that you use to enact positive change.
It's just been a privilege, honestly, to work with Court and coming from such different backgrounds to find a way to act in a sustainable way and to survive and thrive in a changing climate. And that is what we hope EcoMind will do for the next generation. We really believe the climate crisis is a human crisis. Our culture of extraction has destabilized our minds and our communities and the planet in like many ways. The climate crisis represents what happens when you burn out a planet. And we're seeing this in ourselves and everyone all at once. And so 18 months ago, when we first came together and launched EcoMind, we were like, how do we actually help the next generation so they're not anxious, they're not overwhelmed, they're not burning out on the front lines in this work that we're all living through. And we really believe that caring for the planet starts with caring with you and for you. And so we provide a lot of different ways that we support young people. We do it through we're just launching our mental health first aid certificate for the climate crisis. We build community through climate cafes, which are safe spaces for people to share how they're feeling about climate. We do a lot of advocacy around ensuring that we don't have misinformation around climate anxiety, and that we've got sustainable curriculum in schools that isn't creating despair, it's creating hope. There's so many parts of this where it's really exciting to be able to on both ends, people who are anxious or they're burnt out, kind of find ways for them to be more sustainable in their action.
It's so good. And Courtney, we know that many of our listeners have children themselves, and many actually entered the world of sustainability to provide their children with a safe and prosperous future. Why is it important for parents and kids to know how to process these eco anxieties together?
It's such a good question. This problem is huge and complex, and it's not going away anytime soon. And one of the things that is going to help us get through this is connection with ourselves and with each other. And it's funny because we live in this world where emotions are this annoying thing that is like, why are you there? I just need to get my stuff done. Can you go away? But emotions are the oldest language that we have. They're providing really important messages about how we feel about the world around us, what we need to protect, what we love when we've experienced injustice. This is all coming from our emotions. If we don't take the time to actually learn what these emotions, these messages are telling us and how to navigate things like eco-anxiety, we are not setting ourselves up to be able to navigate this complex issue. And particularly between parent and child, we need to work out how to sit with our own climate emotions so that we can sit with the climate emotions of our children and friends and colleagues. And it's absolutely crucial.
Absolutely, it is. We hear from a lot of young professionals who have entered the workforce trying to enact positive change. Do you have an approach or a point of view on how you work with young sustainability professionals or young professionals in general?
Yes, we see that in a way we are supporting the next generation who's inheriting the planet. 2050 is the goal. How old are we in 2050? What does that actually look like? What does the world look like? And the reality is, for a lot of us, whether we're living or working in it like a young sustainability professional, like our life is going to be deeply impacted by climate, and we might not reach net zero. And it looks like maybe that is possible, and we have to accept what that looks like, and also see there'll be a lot of joy and good that can be in a world as long as we have the tools for adaptation and resilience. We do work with a lot of, high school and uni students, but we find that early career professionals have a unique vantage point, and especially when they're just starting out. It's like they're on the coal face and they're looking at this daunting future, but actually, a lot of the feelings that come up, they really are universal. What we see more in that early career space is that fight. And I can really relate to that. And it's like a martyrdom. I am doing this work for something greater than me. I'm going to give everything to it. And I don't need to sleep. I don't need to support myself because we're doing something that's trying to save the planet, which I think is such a noble cause. But caring for the planet starts with you. And especially in a corporate setting, it's really important that we all can do this work for the long haul, the next 25 years plus, whatever is beyond 2050. And so it's really important that sustainability professionals starting their careers are not inheriting those old ways of working, and that we're challenging the cultures that we have on these workplaces so that they are more caring, they are more sustainable, and we're embedding stress regulation and emotional processing and communities of care into the way we work. And there's an opportunity for the leaders to model that. I see a lot of the next generation, they don't want to do the old way anymore. They really want to see, is there a different way of doing this work that actually it's not just what we do, it's how we do it, because that is the thing that we have control over and will impact the what in the end.
How should our listener distinguish between the heavy workload and the emotional burnout that they may be experiencing?
it's hard. Like, this work is stressful. Like, life is stressful. It is something we have to accept every day, and the work can be hard, but there is a tipping point. It's climate tipping points, social tipping points, and even team tipping points. On a personal level, I went through burnout, and I think the term feels already a bit stigmatized. For me, it actually really helped to reframe when it did move from overwork into burnout by understanding the definition. It's not just overwork, it's overwork plus cynicism plus reduced effectiveness. For me, for example, looked like working every weekend and working 12-hour plus days and still feeling like I was behind and not enough and getting more and more tired. But then the second layer of cynicism was, after 5 years doing the work, you're like, I keep on drafting these strategies and net zero roadmaps and not really seeing them being implemented. I don't know if I can quantify missions that my work has actually resulted in. And you start to become cynical and lose faith in the work that you're doing, which ultimately does impact the work. And the last one is reduced effectiveness, part of the burnout definition by the World Health Organization. And the result of those feelings means you're probably not going to be as effective. You are showing up differently to work. And in 2024, I just come back from working and studying in the US and was working so hard, and things were unraveling. I wasn't sleeping at night. I was then sleeping all day and then having to try and, come back and do my work, and taking double the time to write an email, feeling paralysis on tasks. And you can just beat yourself up. I could not let anyone see that. I didn't share how I was feeling with anyone. And instead, I just took more on to prove like, I'm fine, but I wasn't. And being able to realize it is not just overwork, it's those three things, is actually really helpful language. And turns out people can't save a burning planet. Having a team full of people with all those things, overwork, cynicism, reduced effectiveness, that doesn't really seem like a successful team, a happy team, a thriving team, or a sustainable team. So I think it is helpful for people to be able to understand when it is reaching that tipping point.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your story, Jordan. It is important for people to hear whether any of these concepts resonate with situations they're living with in their day to day life that they may have not identified as burnout. One that really resonated was when you talked about working in sustainability, spending all your time and energy building these strategy decks and sustainability plans and not feeling like they're impacting the world in the way that you wish they did. Do you think that contributes to a loss of agency in the individual?
Yeah. A lot of my journey since 2024 is just changing my metrics of success, because if our metric of success is very, very certain in an uncertain future, we don't have a lot of control over that. And yes, I can help draft a net zero action plan, but I do not have any control over that company and all of the stakeholders and the factors in that company, it being implemented. What is your sphere of control? It really comes down to, I can control how I turn up. I can control what I say, what I think, what I feel to a degree. And those things model and those things do influence. There were a lot of success stories in my work. I do have a lot of hope, because you could see these seeds being planted. Even if the whole thing wasn't implemented, you knew that you'd changed someone's mind. You'd spoken to a chief risk officer or a chief financial officer, and you'd seen something click where they realized climate, it's not a nice to have. This is a strategy. This is a risk to the bottom line of the business. And maybe that didn't result that year in a net zero strategy, but maybe it will result in a few years' time. And so for me, knowing my values and using them as the metric of success, that I produced an excellent strategy and I took someone on the journey in their language so that they could adopt this. That's now become my metric of success, which means that I do feel like I've got agency in my personal theory of change of how we get to net zero by 2050 and how we create a sustainable planet. That's a great exercise for all of us to do, just to interrogate. What is our metrics of success? What are our values? What can we control? What can't we control? Spoke to someone recently who does climate campaigning, and one of their KPIs was to close a coal mine. I don't think that's in their control, and you're going to always feel like a failure if the KPI is wrong. And so we have to look and reimagine KPIs.
Yeah, sense of enough. It's this constant thing that comes up when we're talking to people in the community. How do I know that what I have done is enough? And by working out what our values are and what our own metrics of success are that are completely unique to us, that aren't tied to some external outcome that we have no control over, it gives us this sense of enough, and that contributes to our sense of agency. Powerful.
Yeah, massively. What are some of the effective strategies for balancing the fear-based language of climate risks and costs with people's internal emotional need for hope and agency?
Firstly, it's hard. Fear is a really difficult emotion to sit with. I definitely experienced that when I first realized the reality of the climate crisis. I was overcome with fear. We all have different responses to fear. We can fight it, we can run away, and some of us freeze. But one of the most important things that we can do for ourselves when we feel those feelings of fear is to not shy away from them and to actually spend time with them and acknowledge that we are feeling fear, and that is okay. That is normal. That is valid. That is not an inflated response. It is completely normal considering the scale and the complexity of this issue and the real world and real personal threats that it poses to all of us. The best place to start when we experience a difficult emotion is to actually sit with it and let it know that it's okay for it to be there and it's valid that it's there. And then in terms of balancing that with hope and agency, hope is a very difficult thing to hold in this space, especially when, the budget's just come out and there's nothing in there about climate. So we're constantly facing these things that can contribute to us feeling hopeless. What is important is that we accept the reality of the situation. The first part about finding hope is knowing that we have experienced loss, we will experience more loss. Once we've accepted that, we can start to reconnect with what the future that we hope for looks like, and we can start to find agency by working out what our path looks like to contributing to that future. Acceptance is a really, really core part of finding that hope. The other thing with hope is that hope creates opportunities and it creates paths that we couldn't have imagined. Hope is imaginative, right? And so without imagination, that thing doesn't exist. It couldn't possibly exist. And so whilst it's a hard thing to hold, it's an important tool for us to use to find creative ways forward and to find what our unique contribution and unique path looks like to finding that hope and creating that future.
Wow. I love how you're approaching these really conflicting emotions and concepts. It's a really beautiful thing and probably quite productive as well. So I know that you have through EcoMind a lot of quite practical ways that you're working with people. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more. What are these practical strategies that you're putting in place?
Yes. So we have just launched our EcoMind certificate. So you can essentially think of it as mental health first aid for the climate crisis. So we've designed this program with young climate leaders and mental health experts. And we've created it to specifically address the reality of living and taking action in a climate crisis. Some of the things that Georgia and I have already spoken about are core principles from that program. It's essentially 3 90-minute modules. The first one is all about learning to look after self. So we talk about how you can manage stress, how you can break the stress cycle, how you can come out of this survival mode that we all find ourselves in. And then module 2 is all around how we can look after others. A lot of it focuses on sitting with difficult emotions and learning how to do that for yourself so that you can learn how to do that for others. And so that you can learn how to bring these tools to your workplace and create these communities that are really centered on care, where we can show up for each other and we can create these spaces where we can do our work sustainably so that we're not just pretending like everything's fine and we're able to actually be there for each other and feel committed and take action for the long haul. And then module 3 is all about looking after the planet. So how can you take action in a way that is truly unique to you, in a way that sustains your activity for the long haul? A core part of that module is around creating your own personal theory of change. And it starts by everyone taking a moment to work out, what does the future that they hope for look like? Where are they going? What do they want to see? And then working out, how can you contribute to that future in a way that feels really unique to you? Sometimes what we see in the climate movement is a lot of personal individual burden, where people feel like they have to do it all. We use this beautiful analogy where if you look at a diverse ecosystem, each creature, each plant has its own unique role to play. A tree is not trying to be a bird. A bird's not trying to be a lizard. Everyone is just being who they are and contributing in their own unique way. And this movement can operate in the same way. We could do this activity where everyone writes down their own unique strengths and then puts it all on this board, and you see this beautiful map, and it literally looks like an ecosystem. You can see how everybody's skills are contributing to creating this change. It creates this sense of connectivity. You're not in this alone, and we're all in this together. That can be a really powerful tool in preventing burnout and overwork when we know that we're contributing in our unique way. So that's the program. The participants also get access to this EcoMind hub that has a whole bunch of activities that they can use, like in their workplaces and also personally, lots of reflective tools. It's designed to give people the skills to navigate everything that comes with this work and this space, using core principles of connection, emotional regulation, and sustainable action.
It's fascinating because doing that work means that as others begin to realize the scale of risk that we're facing, it better positions us to be able to help them have those conversations, similar to a conversation about grief or loss that you would have with a friend or a family member. It sounds like these are the tools that will help those conversations.
Absolutely. Especially in this space as well. People love frameworks. We have frameworks and structures and systems for how we look after each other and how we talk about these things. We don't learn them at school, and they actually would be the kind of training we need for resilience in an uncertain future. It's been really empowering to have a framework to not only check in with your own emotions, but to know how to really safely hold space. We essentially guide people on how to ask, what do you need from me? We all go into, I want to help, I'll fix. And to give someone a framework to say, well, there are 3 H's. You just need to say, do you need help? Do you need a hug? Or do you just need me to hear you? That is so empowering. And our participant said, I used that on my grandma the other day. Like, it actually really worked. These conversations aren't limited to this space, and we need more people in this movement. And we need it to feel like a joyful, exciting, hopeful movement to join, or else we will not have people joining. And we won't have people staying either. And we need as many people seeing themselves as climate actors. And even on the plane the other day, I had someone who was 27 working in defense and talking about, I can't plan for the future. This world is crazy. And it's not just about climate, it's about AI, and it's about cost of living, and it's about wars happening overseas. And I felt like I could have that conversation because we have the tools to be able to go, yeah, that's really valid. And I hold those things as well. And to be able to kind of get people to think a little bit less certain, but with acceptance around, maybe there's a future that looks different from now, but it's not bad. There will be hard things, but there's a lot that has changed already, and there's still a lot of joy. There's still a lot of happiness. And so I think it's really important that we do both internally within our ecosystem, get better at having those hard conversations, but also externally have the conversations that can get people in. I sound like a cult leader in that way. It's like trying to recruit more climate actors, but everyone is a climate worker. We all are impacted by climate. And so it's really important. Emotions are the gateway to climate action in many ways.
And because that is the case, do you see the EcoMind certificate as something that could be brought into business? Or
It's a good question. What we've started to see is workplaces are communities, and they have created their own rituals and cultures that are impacting the work and impacting how people turn up. It's actually an opportunity to do this work within a workplace on the coalface of this work. And so we do it with we do it in corporate teams, whether it's an in-house sustainability team, we've done it with university sustainability teams, early climate scientists, a lot of workplaces who deal with this work, regardless of which way they are, we are all dealing with the same issue. Feels like this uphill battle of funding and of competing interests and stakeholder management. And it's actually been really beautiful to bring the certificate into teams who corporate workplaces, we do not want to speak about emotions, but they are all there all the time. And so to give people frameworks to be able to identify them and to create cultures of care. What Courtney and I have realized is a community of care, of a culture of care in a workplace. It's not just created without any effort. You do have to put infrastructure in, and we don't have the infrastructure. We haven't been taught it. So how are you creating check-ins at the beginning of meetings? How are you auditing the culture in this way? How are you creating channels or roles where people know who to go to? How are you creating rest time? How are you bringing joy? We have a really fun questions at the start of our certificate. What's the weather for you right now in your life as a feeling? And that's a great way to get people talking about how they actually are turning up that day. And so just giving workplaces the tools that they can easily implement to work more cohesively. If we all actually are on the same page, cognitively and emotionally, the work gets better and it's more sustainable. It's been really exciting to already see some of the things that we've been talking to workplaces about being implemented, little check-ins, little ways that they're celebrating wins, showing gratitude, embedding that in the culture, making it part of the work.
Yeah, that must be really gratifying. And Courtney, I just wanted to go back to something that you mentioned earlier, which was around competing stress factors. We've got not just climate anxiety. AI anxiety is quite real. The disruption of the workplace, navigating the current geopolitical landscape. How do you think we can maintain focus on climate when we're trying to navigate these global stresses?
This is such a good question. One of the most important things we forget in the climate space is that we are whole humans that are existing in this full society, and we don't just work. We have families, we have friends, we have other things in our world that we care about that puts pressure on us and stresses us out. It's really easy to feel like you want to put absolutely everything into this, but we are whole humans and we are experiencing pressures from so many different angles. Acknowledging that is a really important thing. A big part of managing the focus is some of the stuff that G was talking about before. What is your unique role in contributing to this problem? What are your metrics for success? How do you know that what you have done is enough, and how can you find peace with that? Because you are existing in this complex world. It's not just the climate crisis. How do you make sure that you are connected with yourself, with your sense of purpose and your activity, so that you can know that what you're doing is enough and you can still show up for all of the other things that you have in your life?
Wow, it's very true. What would both of you like our listener to take away from today's conversation?
I think for me, I've always been so focused on the what. What am I doing? Is it enough? And I'd love listeners to take away not what, but how am I doing this work? And the ripple effects of the how, because how you do the work, how you make others feel, as you do the work, that is going to have so many more ripple effects culturally, not just laterally, but down through generations. The next generation is looking up to sustainability leaders. They're modeling behavior, they're modeling ways of working, and there is this opportunity to show that we can achieve the same what with a different how, and maybe achieves a better what, a more inclusive what, more empathetic what. At the moment, you could say the what is doing enough, we're getting there, but we're not really achieving the what yet either. So we do have to really reimagine how we do. How are you doing the work in a way that's sustainable, that is embodying sustainability as the how?
I think for me, it would be that you're not alone in these feelings, in these complex emotions around the climate crisis. We ran a program with Syra, and it was the first time that any of them had realized that each other were feeling things like despair and grief and sadness. There are people around you who are feeling the same way. And the more that we can share this with each other, then the better equipped we'll be to move through these things and focus on the how, and take action in a way that's really meaningful, because we're not alone and we are connected.
I love that. And is there a call to action for our listeners?
It's probably having a look at, for yourself and your teams, how are you doing this work? And do you need to have a moment where you reflect? We have a certificate that gives you the framework to do that, and we can come into your org in person. We can do it virtually. We can do it over weeks. Some people have done it as a lunch and learn or for a training day. There's so many ways that you can start to interrogate this, but you have to give it time, and it is productive use of time. We all get very obsessed in this world of optimization and productivity, and I've had to really see that this work does make the work more productive in the end, but it's also just important in and of itself without the goal of productivity. So
We'll make sure to link all of your contact details in the episode description so people can find you. Before we close out, we would love to do a very quick rapid fire. First question is, do you have one recommendation for our listeners? It could be book, podcast, a song, an article, documentary, anything that you would like to share as a recommendation.
mine would be to read Zen and the Art of Saving the Planet by Thich Nhat Hanh. He is the father of mindfulness. He brought mindfulness to the West, and he also was a freedom fighter in Vietnam. So he beautifully marries like Buddhist concepts of mindfulness to the fight to save the planet or bring justice to the world. And it's incredible. Really recommend.
I had like 10 things pop into my mind, but I'm going to choose one. Where the Light Gets In by Ben Crow. He released it at the beginning of this year. He's a mindset coach to Ash Barty and a whole bunch of athletes. It's this guidebook on how to be a feeling human in this challenging world.
And then who is someone that has inspired each of you that you think we should have on the podcast?
There are so many awesome people doing things in the space that represent that, their unique path, personal theory of change. Someone I'm so inspired by is Ezu Tan. She's one of the founders of Climate Rise, and she comes from a consulting background, but she's used her unique skills in a way that creates a monthly community where people meet up and they send letters to MPs on climate. They have sent thousands of letters, and they create such a beautiful community where every time someone sends a letter, they have a gong and everyone celebrates. Like, it's so joyful, and it's just such an amazing example of taking your skills, using them in a way that helps people be strategic and think about how to have an impact. It's in Sydney, it's in Melbourne, and I think they're starting one in Queensland. Burst of joy. It's great.
And mine's definitely a similar vein. I would say Tegan Lerm from Project Planet. They've done Build a Ballot. It's amazing. As someone who found voting really difficult to understand, as a lot of Aussies do, they've just made it so simple and so accessible. You're actually able to engage in this really meaningful tool to shape our Australia and government. I just think that she's awesome.
Do you have any positive climate news that you could share with us today?
the campaign and the advocacy and the movement around attacks on gas exports has been so inspiring. And we haven't yet necessarily got to the what or the outcome, but how they have brought everyone on the journey, how they've found language that isn't just climate language. It is justice, it's equity, it's feeling like that there's something wrong and we're not getting a fair go. It's deeply Australian, and while we're not yet at the outcome, you can feel that it's changing something in how our culture is thinking about our economy and about how do we create a lucky Australia for generations to come. And so that is my positive climate news that's unfolding that's giving me a lot of hope.
And mine, as an ocean lover, I've been watching the High Seas Treaty, and they've announced that there's going to be the world's first ocean COP in January next year, which is just amazing. And there's now a global commitment to protecting 30% of the world's oceans before 2030. So that makes me feel really hopeful.
Absolutely. We want to give each of you your own Green Fix magic wand, and we'd love to hear how you would like to use it to change the world.
Great question. I would wave my Green Fix wand and just reshape our entire culture to be one that is based on renewal. So, renewal of energy, resources, people, nature, just this entire refocus where renewal is at the center.
That's good. My magic wand also can align with renewal, but I would really love to see us investing in resilience in all senses of the word. We've been so obsessed with mitigation, and we have to continue mitigation, but it might not be enough. We need adaptation, but we also need resilience, because the world will look different. And how are we resilient in that world and ourselves, resilience in communities, resilience in our economy? How are we teaching our young people to be resilient and to be agile? You've got IQ and EQ, but actually the thing that means that we're all going to be able to weather the next few decades, where the only certainty we have is uncertainty and change, is AQ, which is agility quotient and your ability to be resilient and adapt. By investing in resilience, we can all learn to adapt together, whatever the future kind of holds.
Yes, I'm a big fan of the new AQ, and it will only become more and more important over the next few years. Courtney and Georgia, thank you so much for joining us today. Listening to you both has been such a joy, because it just shows how important it is to put the people at the center of the conversation. And the work that you're doing is so inspiring. What you've built with EcoMind and continuing to build is going to have such huge ripple effects. I know that already. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. They've been beautiful questions and just lovely chatting with you guys.
What a great chat. Thank you so much. This was Green Fix with your hosts, Loretta Gutierrez and Dan Levington. You can get your Green Fix every 2 weeks on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Pocket Casts.